Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street, presented by Plaza Hotel and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Here is Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel, Gary Vickery, and I'm your host, Lisa Melmed. Hello, welcome back to On the Corner of Main Street. We've taken a little break, but we are back.
Good to be back, Lisa. Good to be back. Yeah, it was about a 3-week hiatus, around then. It was a good time to take off from the podcast.
Yeah, but I mean, so much has happened that we have to recap.
It has been an interesting few weeks, indeed.
First of all, this beautiful neighbor to our left has opened.
East. That's east.
East has opened, and you were at the grand opening. How did it go?
Yeah, it was great. It was very nice. It opened, it's almost a month ago now, I guess. I always felt like until they opened their hotel rooms, we wouldn't get a true sense of its impact on the market, and I still sort of maintain that. I'll be curious to see once their rooms open and they start bringing, their customers down, not their customers, but new customers downtown to stay there. I think that's the key. The grand opening was very nice. They had a big event up at the pool, and then I was part of a group that shot the first craps dice, which was fun.
Congrats. Thank
you. I did hit my point, which was nice. And it was nice to see it open. The sportsbook's great, and it's nice to see more energy on Main Street. That's the one thing I've noticed. Main Street looks great with their lights and the median on the street all cleaned up now. It really feels like the hope that we had for Main Street is starting to come to fruition. The other issue with them opening, of course, is it's opening into the slowest time of the year with Thanksgiving upon us and no rodeo and then no CES, and who knows what New Year's Eve looks like this time of year, of course, but not this time of year, but this year. And so it's hard to judge its full impact on the market, but I think as an overall, it's very very nice for downtown to have it here, finally open, and no more construction noise either.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the view from Oscars is incredible.
The view from Oscars is just, I was just admiring it now with the new screen on the Fremont Street Experience and the new screen on the back of the zip line and the light bulbs on Circa and the logo and our light bulbs and our marquee. It feels like old Vegas, and it's nice. Yeah. It's good to see.
Yep. And, of course, the governor made an announcement this weekend.
He did. He made an announcement which has imposed new restrictions on us as operators, but on all businesses. It's not just us. And most of them, again, it's a very slow time of year, so us having occupancy of a certain level, I don't think really challenges us. Where it does challenge us is we were approved for our Super Bingo event, which was approved by the Health Department and the Gaming Control Board in October, and we had the same formula for this December the 7th and 8th, but unfortunately, under the new guidelines, we will have to cancel that, and not cancel, but postpone it, hopefully to January, and things will be a little better by then. We can do it again. And then, obviously, all the food and beverage is reduced, and we're just figuring out some of those changes and making sure our team's aware of them and can enforce them. I mean, some of the stuff is tough to enforce, whether it's 2 households on Thanksgiving. We'll see how people respond to that, and I think our guest on the podcast today will have some thoughts on how you enforce that even. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he did, and what's already a slow time without NFR, as I said, and Thanksgiving anyway, it's going to be an interesting 60 days here, but we've been in this now how many months?
I think 8.
Yeah, it's a lot. It feels like a lot more than that, but anyway, we adapt, we survive, and we'll come out of it strong.
Today, we are joined by the Sheriff of Clark County, Nevada since 2015. Welcome, Sheriff Joseph Lombardo, to On the Corner of Main Street.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Joe, for joining us. I appreciate it. I know you're busy, especially now, so really appreciate you taking the time to join us on this podcast and share a little bit of your background with us and talk about the current climate.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me. You've been supporters of mine for quite some time, and I'm more than happy to come over to the plaza and say hi and see what's new happening down here.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
So how did you end up in Las Vegas, and how did you end up as sheriff?
Well, it's not a complicated story. It's pretty simple. My dad was in the United States Air Force, and he subsequently was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base and brought me along since I was his kid. And so He was signed out at Nels, but prior to that, I was born in Misawa, Japan, and it was because my dad was in the military. He was part of the Air Force there, and he was stationed there. So we moved all over Europe and United States until we eventually ended up here. And, in the military, they tend to move you like every few years. I don't know why they do that, but they do. And so I had to start in a new school every couple of years and make new friends, all that kind of thing that goes along with it.
I'm sure you were good at that.
No, probably not. So I ended up at Rancho High School here locally. I got there my sophomore year of high school.
What year was this?
1976.
And who was the sheriff then?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I could calculate it back, but the police department was formed, or the sheriff's department, LVMPD, the Metropolitan Police Department, was formed in 1973. So prior to that, we had the traditional organization of a police force here within 99% of most jurisdictions. You have a police chief in the city and the sheriff in the county. It's funny. Last night I was having dinner with someone. I said I was interviewing you today, or not interviewing, but doing a podcast with you, and they said, "Well, he's the sheriff. That means he would be." They're from out of town, and I said, "He's the sheriff, so he would be for the county, not the city." And I said, "I don't think so. He definitely oversees the city as well." So he was like, "Well, I don't think that's possible because it's two separate things." And I never heard about any of this. And then I researched a little bit, and I guess in 1973, Vegas and the county merged. Yeah, and so to answer your question, it was Ralph Lamb. So they made a decision once they merged the police department that he would be the de facto sheriff, and then the police chief was brought in as the undersheriff. And was Ralph Lamb someone that you were familiar with? Did he inspire you to run for sheriff later on in life? Oh yeah, he absolutely did. He if I back up to finish the original question, so I ended up here in 76, went to Rancho High School, left a little while for the United States Army, and then came back, finished my degree at UNLV, and subsequently joined the police department in 1988. Okay. And then that was John Moran was the sheriff then. He was the one that pinned my badge on when I graduated the academy. And then subsequently went through my career, and I'm sure you're going to ask me about that. He then went to the Gaming Control Board, right, John Moran? I think he did. I'm not sure. Okay. That's a good question. Okay. That's the first time I ever heard that. You threw me for a curveball. Yeah, I think he was on the Gaming. Your producer can Google it real quick. Yeah. Rich, John Moran was on the Gaming Control Board? Pretty sure.
Did you always want to become sheriff? Was that? No, absolutely not. That was just pie in the sky kind of talk as I was going through my career. And when you're a ground level troop, the sheriff is just some enigma that you don't rarely ever meet. You happen to pin your badge on when you graduate. You probably never see him for the next 10, 15 years of your career. And the person of rank that you more closely associated with was your sergeant, lieutenant, and then your captain. And but as you progress through your career, if you made the decision to promote, so you go through the levels of sergeant, lieutenant, captain, deputy chief, assistant sheriff, and then undersheriff and sheriff. So to become sheriff, you have to go through each of those positions? No. See, that's unique. So I was a commissioned police officer, and then you maintain the ability to be a commissioned police officer throughout your entire career. If you want to run for sheriff, it's a political position, so you have to basically retire and then run for you can run as your police officer, but once you're elected to be the sheriff, you have to retire because it's an elected position and it's a part of a separate retirement system, blah, blah, blah. And so the qualifications here's the unique thing. A lot of people understand the qualifications to run for sheriff is you have to provide $100 filing fee. Okay. And then you have to have 5 years of police experience. And at any level. At any level. And you have to have a high school diploma. So that's interesting. So, so internally, the test for promotion, you have to have a college degree, but to be the sheriff, all you need is a high school diploma. So, over the years, the legislature who controls the qualifications for the sheriffs in every county in Nevada, they've explored different, qualifications depending on the population cap.
for different jurisdictions, but to me it's a deplorable level of qualifications to be the sheriff.
Right.
I mean, I'm in charge of a $1.2 billion budget, and it would be a little scary to put an individual in with a minimum of 5 years of police experience and
a high school diploma.
Yeah, no management experience or anything, and a person like that can conceivably get elected for sheriff.
But I read that you did go to UNLV?
Yeah, I got my bachelor's in science, and I got my master's in science at UNLV.
Okay, so that was while you were on.
No, I had my bachelor's prior to being a police officer, and then while I was on, I pursued my master's.
Okay.
And was able to obtain my master's while working as a police officer. So the master's was in crisis management. So I think that goes a little bit along with what I do.
Pretty good experience.
I would say so.
Pretty useful experience.
It's funny because 90%, I don't know what the percentage is. I'm just guessing, but most of your people that go to college and graduate, they usually don't work in the endeavor they went to college for.
What's useful to them, yeah. Exactly. No, that's probably true. That's probably an accurate percentage.
And what was your college degree in?
Civil engineering.
Oh, wow.
So.
Do you use that?
No. No, not at all.
Are you located in Las Vegas? Is your office in Las Vegas, or where about?
Yes, I'm right on Martin Luther King, 400 South Martin Luther King, which is in the city of Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And it's actually right behind the plaza here.
Yeah, the new building over there, right on the way to my house.
So if
between the plaza and my house.
Nice.
You go behind the plaza, cross the railroad tracks, go past the Smith Center, and there's my building.
Oh, so close.
I'm on the 5th floor there.
So what would you say? You were a police officer in 1988, you said?
Yeah, I joined in 1988.
And you were how many years? 5 years, you said?
What? 5 years.
How many years were you a police officer? Sorry.
Oh, I was 26 years.
Oh, 26 years.
26 years before I ran for sheriff.
As a police officer, how would you say over the years the role of a police officer in Las Vegas has changed from 1988 to today? I mean, obviously social media plays a big part of it.
You know, it's. I think. Las Vegas is unique in the fact that it's mother's milk of the economy is gambling, and so that creates a unique environment for law enforcement, and we have to work in conjunction with gaming control and as well as the casino people have to. It's just the way the types of calls for service that we respond to in the casino environment is completely different than any other economy or any other jurisdiction. And then we deal with, obviously, the normal police functions that any community deals with on a daily basis. Quite often when you talk to tourists, they're surprised that people live here. So where do you think the workers live?
Which hotel do you live in?
Yeah, exactly. And so it has its own challenges because it's 24/7. What I've always told people, no matter where you live, unless it's maybe New York City or Los Angeles, is the sidewalks roll up, around 12 p.m., midnight, the bewitching hour. And you have a skeleton crew of law enforcement that's out there, maintaining law and order in the community. But in Las Vegas, the graveyard shift is more robust than the day shift in the law enforcement organization. And so
you said graveyard is more robust. And just for anyone listening that doesn't know, graveyard, at least in our industry, is midnight to 8 a.m. Is it the same as?
It's the same for us. Ours is actually 10 p.m. to
6 a.m.
6 a.m. Actually, it's 8 a.m. because we do
8-hour
10-hour shifts.
10-hour shifts.
10-hour shifts. And so in uniform and patrol, it's 10-hour shifts.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's brings its own challenges, and and what did your mother probably said when you were growing up? Nothing good happens at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning.
Go home.
Was she right?
So the cops have to stay awake and deal with that. Mm-hmm. So it's unique, and I think it's a big draw for law enforcement to come here and work. We don't have any problems with recruiting and people standing in line to apply for the job because of the uniqueness and the adrenaline associated with what we do as a business in Las Vegas, and eventually what you do as a little law enforcement officer.
How much of your day-to-day job focuses on Las Vegas versus the other parts of Clark County?
You mean the city versus the county?
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's It's just like our funding formula. The county contributes around 60% of my total budget, and the city contributes 40%. And I would say that would be synonymous to what I do on a daily basis in my job. So the one unique thing that a lot of people don't know is I control the Clark County Detention Center, which is the jail right over here on Casino Center, which is located in the city, but it's the Clark County Detention Center. So, and that's a big draw on my budget. So they're around a $250 million draw on my budget.
That's the building right here across from where, and that's what I've heard. I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that sometimes when they get let out, they say go over to Greyhound and get on a bus and go somewhere.
I can't confirm or deny. But hopefully that's not going to be a headache of yours any longer. So.
A couple more months, yeah. Well, we wanted to talk to you about that. I mean, how difficult has and we inherited a 50-year lease with the Greyhound bus station. They've been here 49 years. July will be the 50th anniversary when they depart. How much? I guess it's a two-part question. How much of a headache has the Greyhound bus station been for you? And then how much potential and upside do you think there is in them leaving at least downtown? They're going, just so you know, they're moving to Sunset by the airport, to that RTC terminal over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they're not totally out of your hair, but they're out of the how much do you think it's going to better downtown not having them here?
I think it's a boom for downtown. Nothing derogatory to say against Greyhound. They provide an essential service for people that need to or move around the United States, and it's affordable and all the things that goes along with it. But it also has a bad element associated with it. Individuals that are running away from what they're dealing with where they live. They think they're going to come here for a quick win, and they take the bus out here. Or people that lose their income and take the bus out of here. It's a draw. It's a negative draw for the general area associated with the Greyhound.
I'll tell you something crazy. We have a casino guest, very, very good casino guest, and I don't know why I can relate to. Not relate, but I can understand that he's scared of flying. But I don't know why Greyhound is his method of transport, and he comes here with a briefcase of cash.
Oh, really?
I mean, not that.
Maybe you don't want to put that out there. Then we have people stalking the Greyhound.
You would never know. I guess you look for a guy with a briefcase. Yeah, I'm not going to say how much. There's $10 in the case. There's nothing in the case.
Maybe
it is crazy though.
Maybe he wears a money belt. You can't even see it.
He won the other day, and he just got back on the bus with the money. I couldn't believe it. It was bizarre.
That's interesting. But back to your question, Jonathan, is it's a negative, not a positive on my perspective in what we deal with in fighting crime and everything else. There's a lot of people that hang out within the direct vicinity, the bus stations in any jurisdiction, not just Las Vegas, looking to victimize people that are fresh and new and wide-eyed and have no idea where they're going or what they're doing upon the time they get off the bus. So if you can move that environment away from your place of business, it's a benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a couple of years back now, and our security team's done a great job along with the assistance of Metro, but there was a time the captain downtown, it was probably 4 years ago, told me it was the highest number of calls. Is that the right way to describe it?
Yeah, calls for service.
It was the highest call for service in the city was the Greyhound station. Now, this was 4 or 5 years ago, and I think we've done a good job of helping to police that.
No, you've done an excellent job, especially since you've come on board and addressed the security issues associated with that business and the partnership that you've developed with Las Vegas Metro and our ability to police that has been beneficial for everybody. But I would probably agree with that captain that gave you that stat. That is a predominant location where we spend a significant amount of our time.
So Rich over here, our trustee advisor, has just told me that, and I think I knew this, but so Metro includes Clark County and the city of Henderson.
No.
Sorry, it does not include the city of Henderson and North Las Vegas. Has there ever been conversation about merging it all under your
that conversation gets brought up probably on an annual basis. But you incorporate. So when you incorporate as a city, so North Las Vegas and or Henderson or Mesquite or anybody, part of your incorporation includes law enforcement service and fire service. Public safety service. So they can either contract with the local sheriff for that police service, or they have to have their own in-house police department. So in particular to North Las Vegas, not so much now as previous years. They were in financial constraints and challenges, and so that conversation was coming around on a regular basis whether we would absorb the police function in North Las Vegas. Now that would not occur unless the state took domain over the city.
Okay.
So if they go into receivership, the state would take domain over the city until they worked out the jurisdictional and the bonding issues and everything that goes along with the city. And then in the meantime, I would take over the police services as a stopgap until they make a final decision. So if the only other way that would happen, me being in that jurisdiction or any other jurisdiction, if they say, hey, we don't want to fund our own police department anymore, we'll contract with you. What's the price we have to pay? So.
Got it.
What are some of your favorite job duties and least favorite parts of the job?
I think it's the people and the people. That's the answer to both the questions. Is unfortunately, the negative aspect is dealing with. I don't want to be derogatory, but a lot of personnel issues is a draw on my time. A lot of things that we have to consider as any employer. It doesn't matter if it's police work or a casino. A lot of things you have to deal with in the employee environment, the negative aspects, people trying to get over on the system, that kind of stuff, as you can imagine. And then the most positive is the people. Mm-hmm. I love working around the young cops and even the older cops and conveying some of my experience and maybe I can help them be more successful in their job and seeing the successful projects they put together and how they envelop the community and provide that blanket of safety for every jurisdiction. It's just amazing. And then when we have like a complicated crime occur and my folks going, to the wall and to investigate it until we get a person in handcuffs, that's very satisfactory.
How many people do you have under you?
Just about 6,000.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of people to have.
Do you know?
A lot of personnel issues.
So out of they're and the majority of them are under 25 years of age, and they carry a gun and they take away people's freedom. So, and when I talk about the negative aspects, is that when people go sideways with that authority and that ability to operate on their own and they do it the wrong way, that's the headache for me. So out of the 6,000, 3,300 are police officers, 950 are corrections officers, and the rest are civilian employees.
Wow.
So you were talking about how it's satisfactory to put someone in handcuffs and figure out the
I don't get to
solve
do that
the
anymore.
case, crack the case.
Yeah.
But you oversaw the months-long investigation of the October 1 shootings. I heard that you were at dinner when that first happened, and you jumped up right away and went to go help.
Right.
How do you think that has affected you, and how has that affected Clark County?
Well, I'm hoping that it's a one-off event, and what I mean by that, it never happens again. Mm-hmm. And how that affected me, it happened on my watch, obviously, and could I have prevented it? Did I have the ability to prevent it? And if I do a matter-of-fact self-evaluation of that, no, I couldn't have prevented it. Or maybe I could have schooled local security, casino security, to prevent, put stop gaps in place and target harden their facility, prevent something like that happen. And I think after 9/11, we did the majority of all that target hardening type of work, and we thought we had all the what-ifs in place, and unfortunately it happened. And I'm hoping it's a one-off event, but I was very proud of the fact how we responded to it, and after the fact how the city coalesced around itself and became a community mm-hmm. as a result of it. And I've said it before in close proximity to that event. We were really a disjointed committee. I don't want to be that derogatory, but everybody had their own agenda. You didn't really know your neighbors, and, mm-hmm. and people work 24/7 shifts, and your neighbor you may live next to you for 2 years, you never knew who they were. But it seemed like all that changed after 1 October, with the proliferation of the Golden Knights and, mm-hmm. and them rallying yep. the folks around. And I think we became more of known as a community versus a casino. And that was the one benefit, the shining light on that. The other shining light was the partnership that we had formed for years with Private Security versus us, and how we responded in conjunction with Private Security to deal with that event. And then we identified, we did an after-action report, a very self-facing report that, identified our sores and warts and everything else so we can improve in the future. And I think you have to take advantage of a crisis and identify how you can be better to move forward. And I think it changed policing. And how people see the threat picture out there when it hits home. It changes policing and private ownership. I mean, the casinos have been very robust in target hardening their facilities, with surveillance cameras and evaluating people that are staying there, and having, your hospitality people check the rooms, when people have do not disturb for 3 days of event.
Exactly. We don't go, I think it's 48 hours now?
Yeah.
48 hours is the maximum you can have do not disturb. But,
that's all changed.
That has changed, and we try to learn from, obviously, we have a situation here with Fremont Street Experience right there. Right. We wanted to learn from that, and, the only thing we could really think of was the way, that, having less arms up in the room, but that doesn't necessarily prevent it totally. But we just installed a system that detects if you're armed coming into the building, and it can tell you what type of weaponry it is at the entry level to the door. And I think if it's successful, we're in the process of installing it. I could see a lot of places going for that. But were there other things that came from that you thought were teachable moments for the casinos? I mean...
I think one of the biggest things, and I understood it, it's just like remember when TSA stood up after 9/11 at the airports? Mm-hmm. And hospitality was, okay, let's get through here and let's get on an airplane, let's enjoy ourselves. And then TSA stood up and everybody was complaining, why do I got to get searched? I'm not a terrorist. But after a point when people realized, well, they're here for your own safety, okay? And people accepted it. And I think that's the same thing that has occurred in the environment of the casinos and the hospitality industry in general. Was you didn't want to be intrusive to a guest. You wanted to be as open arms and accepting and let them have free will on what they want to do to entertain themselves. And now we inject security into it, and I think they appreciate it now versus shunned it in previous times, and they're more comfortable seeing an overt security staff versus a covert security staff now. I think a lot of people appreciate it now.
What are your thoughts on pros and cons, I guess, of casino security being armed?
I would support it, but in a limited capacity. So a lot of your properties will limit it to one person per shift that would be armed. I think it's important to provide that self-protection for your security personnel and for your guests, because I think society is becoming more violent, and I think it's important for them to have the tools, just like police, to have the tools to be successful in an encounter. And I think as long as they have the training and that the facility provides the training for the officers so they can make the right decisions. But I think to arm the entire staff is probably not the right idea.
You and I are on totally the same page.
Right.
Glad to hear that. That's good. That makes me feel better. Yeah. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah. So you work pretty closely with casino security. Do you work closely with other security at other types of businesses?
Well, that would be just a generality. Like maybe your apartment complexes and things like that. The troops, depending on what area command they work in and stuff, they have a pretty robust relationship for any security personnel in any industry. But I think the relationship that police have with the casino industry and their security personnel is probably the most robust relationship and partnership in the United States or the world, because we depend on them significantly. So about 8% of my total work demands is generated by the casino environment. And so if I do 3.3 million calls a year, 8% is a big number, right? So what's that, 240,000? So that would be
pretty good math.
So that would be a big draw on us if we were independent and we had to handle it all ourselves. So we rely on security greatly. And you know what, they received significant training, and they know the uniqueness of the gaming industry and the type of fraud that's perpetrated on establishments, and without them we wouldn't be successful as an organization. Now what the current issue is, with the pandemic and the budget and the economy, is all the properties are having trouble hiring qualified security personnel.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
You as a department, though, or as an organization, haven't been charged with enforcing any of the COVID regulations, have you?
Yeah.
For example, you're not coming to my house on Thanksgiving to check if I have more than 2 households.
No, we're not.
I won't, of course, but I'm just making sure.
Yeah, whatever. So let me give you some thoughts on that. Yes, your original question, yes, we have been involved with and charged with enforcement, but it was in the business part of it. So in other words, if you were a business and you weren't abiding by the governor's directives, you would be notified by business licensing, either via the county or the city, and they would provide education to you as to the ills of your ways. And then if you did not comply on a subsequent check, then they start talking about your license, and then they start talking about fines. And if you still fail to comply, then that's when we would get involved. We would do actual enforcement and closure of doors, and then you'd have to go before, the powers to be to explain the reasons why you did what you did, or to receive your license back, or permanent revocation. Now with the new governor's orders, we always had the social distancing issues and the crowd size issues and the parks and all that stuff. We never did any derogatory enforcement. It was all education. So if we got a call, we would show up, and if it was in a public space, and say, hey, you guys got to, separate, or you're going to have to shut this down. We didn't put handcuffs and send somebody to jail, reference those type of issues. But now with the new directive, you can have limitations within the house. Now the Constitution, the directive is all encompassing,
right,
when it comes from the governor, but it's still skirting the Constitution and our ability to do enforcement. And to be honest with you, it's a resource issue for us. We have a lot more pressing issues associated with crime in general versus the pandemic. And I understand some people say, well, you're not balancing that appropriately, Sheriff, and that's what they elect me to do, is to balance that. And my position on that is, I got more important things to do. And you know what? At some point, you have to be an adult and take on the risk on your own accord.
Right.
In other words, makes the decision. If you're not comfortable, don't go there. If you think that they're not creating an environment for you to be safe, don't go there.
Right.
But with all
that's fascinating.
With all the enforcement or the prophylactics that is provided, that you do it on your own. So,
have you gotten more or less calls during the pandemic, than not during the pandemic?
Well, keep in mind, he had to oversee all the protests as well.
Right.
That crazy stuff that was going on down here as well. I mean, not just down here, but the Strip and everything. I mean, how do you sleep at night? Isn't that a better question?
Yeah, exactly.
And how many hours do you sleep
look
at night?
Me. I'm like the before and after of the president of the United States, right? When I first got elected to now. So to answer your question, has there been an increase or decrease in calls for service since the pandemic? We've had about a 3% decrease in calls for service, total calls for service. And I think that's directly related to businesses being boarded up. Okay? But my concern now moving forward is the depletion of the unemployment benefits, and the moratorium is no longer existent on housing, right? Rent abatement. So now we're going to have to deal with a lot of people that are in acts of desperation in order to provide for their families and or put gas in their car to get to work, or anything that you can imagine where people, what they do in points of desperation. So I think by the end of the year, we may be seeing a different dynamic here. So
that's pretty scary. That is.
So downtown Vegas used to have a reputation of being kind of more dangerous than other places, but it was getting so much better. What do you think is the future of downtown safety? Well,
I think you're correct in your assessment. the majority of my young career as a patrol officer was right here on Fremont Street.
Really?
So I've seen the changes over the years, and I think they're positive. So, we did deal with a lot of the theatrics and the street performers and all the things. That's things that we weren't used to dealing with before. Now, in today's age, we're dealing with the homeless, an increase in the homeless. And that's not just in the city. That's across the board, across the United States.
Right.
Las Vegas is not unique in the homeless situation. I think we're actually better situated in the homeless situation because of our temperature. Yeah, I think it's very hard to be homeless in the middle of summer here. And I think that has helped us in some aspects of controlling the homeless population. They just move on to greener pastures per se. But we still have a significant issue we have to deal with. And unfortunately, all the services associated with the homeless issue are located in the city.
Right.
In close proximity to Fremont Street. So that's a dynamic that Fremont Street deals with versus the Strip. And but to answer your question is I've seen a significant increase or quality of life environment in the Fremont Street corridor. I think it's a lot better. People feel safer down here now, and they're comfortable returning to Las Vegas and stay the night, put their head down in the Las Vegas corridor or the city corridor.
And it's important that we tell people that, because I think the perception right now is twofold. One, a lot of locals haven't liked historically coming downtown for really two reasons, which is safety and parking. And I think those two things have improved down here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But even more than that, the tourists that are listening, I think there's a perception right now, there's this perception that Las Vegas is very unsafe right now out there, especially on social media. And I think it's important to convey that actually calls are down 3%.
The calls are down for 3%, but in crime totality is down 3%. So that you're exactly right, Jonathan, as far as the perception, and it's my job and your job and everybody else's job is to preach the true story, because things get sensationalized in the social media space and all that stuff, but in actuality, in total crime is down 3%.
That's for the whole city.
For the whole city.
That's great.
And to include that includes, like I said, Las Vegas, city of Las Vegas, and so you get some one-off events, some dynamic event where they show there's gunshots fired or significant fight or a fray going on, and that gets sensationalized, and they think that's 24/7, where they're just unique events that stand on their own, and I think it's our job to preach the truth.
I mean, there perhaps was a time over the end of summer where it did seem like every few days.
Well, yeah, the demographic had changed a little bit, and then there was arguments on room prices and the unavailability of releases for people to blow off steam. None of the nightclubs are open, none of the pools were open. Even the locals couldn't go to the movies, anything like that, and people just get pent up with unemployment and everything else that goes along with it. And so we went through a little stage there that we were dealing with an increase in violent crime. But we got our arms wrapped around that, and we've been able to curtail it significantly here recently, and I'm proud to say that crime is down.
Nice.
So if you look at so I'm part of Major City Chiefs, LVMPD, which is the 55 largest cities in the United States, and we get a crime picture every quarter from every jurisdiction, and we are lower than anybody.
Nice.
So
that's great
and
news.
I think it's important for people to hear that.
That's huge. Listeners, come on out. We're safe. We're safer than where you are right now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's important for people to hear that, and like I said, there's that. We were able to hire in the last 6 years. We're stagnating right now because of the economy, but that 6 years of hiring is made it to where you're walking down any part of Las Vegas, you're going to see a police officer, and that omnipresence of a police officer makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you ever had any encounters with organized crime in your career? Specifically mafia, mob,
Yeah.
Black Book.
By the way, Oscar is listening. So
Well, Oscar knows this story. So Tony The Ant Spilotro, who is everybody knows who that is. He used to own the food factory over off Sierra Vista in Cambridge, And I used to live there. And when I was going to college at UNLV, and I used to go to the food factory to eat, I didn't know who Anthony Spilotro was. And until the movie Casino came out.
Right, exactly.
So I used to go there to eat, and one time a group of them were sitting in the back booth, and they called me over to talk to me, and they asked me what I thought of the food. And I said, oh, it's good food and everything. Well, I got stopped by the police as I exited the restaurant, wanted to know what I was talking to them about. And so that was my only knowledge of a mobster. Now, as a police officer, I guess it depends on how you classify a mobster.
Right.
I deal with crooks every day, but are they considered a mobster?
Right. I mean, organized crime is a broad term.
La Cosa Nostra, right? And but organized crime had a footprint here, and no matter what Oscar says, at one point in time. But it's more of a corporate environment now versus a mob environment.
Yeah.
And so Vegas has changed in some aspects, and for the good and the bad, but I think more good than bad.
What do you mean by corporate environment?
I mean, a lot of, so you have a conglomerate, so that's one thing that's unique between the city of Las Vegas and downtown versus the Strip the Strip is more of a corporate environment where you have one corporation owns several properties, and everything is based on their philosophy is pushed into those properties, whereas downtown is a little more independent, and every casino has its own uniqueness, and depending on who runs the casino and who owns the casino, it might play to your personality more than any other place.
But you're not suggesting there's organized crime in any of those places?
No, not at all.
I think that's where Lisa was getting excited.
No, there's no organized crime. I just think it's just difference in ownership, a corporate philosophy versus an independent philosophy. Right. There's good and bad on both sides.
Got it.
And we mentioned his name earlier a little bit, but do you have a role model? Was Ralph Lamb, because he was involved with the organized crime. I heard some great, I've researched him a little bit. Do you have somebody that you look up to and somebody that inspired you a little bit in your current capacity?
Well, there's been a few people, but Ralph Lamb was, so I didn't really have a relationship with Ralph Lamb growing up in the police department until Bill Young became sheriff. And Bill Young had a robust relationship with Ralph Lamb, and he introduced me to Ralph Lamb, and I had the opportunity to sit down with him on more than one occasion and talk about the old ways and the new ways, and he gave me some life experience and understanding of law enforcement and is what expected of an individual who runs an organization. And so I was able to, before he passed away, God rest his soul, to receive some great knowledge and experience from him.
Was he as much of a character as the books and movie depict?
He was, yes.
He would just drive to the airport and tell them to get back on the plane and all that stuff?
It's funny, when I got elected sheriff, quite often I'll run into some of the old-timers in town, and they say, well, Ralph Lamb wouldn't put up with that, sheriff. And I go, yeah, if Ralph Lamb did what he did today, it might be a different story. He might have handcuffs on, but he did a fantastic job as the sheriff during his time, and the world changed, and everybody has to change along with it. And hopefully some of the advice he gave me, I've been able to absorb and partake it to other individuals. But to build off the question you asked me, both Doug Gillespie and Bill Young have been
Doug Gillespie was before you.
Right, very influential in my life in law enforcement.
Amazing.
So, what along with kind of the same lines, what are your proudest accomplishments?
I got asked that question the other day, and I think one of my proudest accomplishment, I'll answer that from the position of sheriff, is the decentralization of the detective function. And I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest of what I'm talking about. So if you were a victim of crime in years past, a patrol officer would show up and they would take a crime report if the suspect wasn't there or they're unable to apprehend them, and that crime report would get thrown in a basket, and eventually you'd make it up to a detective up in, we called it the Ivory Tower, but it was a centralized function. And then so a detective's looking at you as a number and a lot of anonymity that goes along with it, and you're just part of the system versus an individual victim, and their eyes on maybe a week later, and lot of your crime has to be solved within 24 or 48 hours. So it was a bad system. So if you looked at it as a private enterprise and our solvability of violent crime or property crimes was right around 3% back then. So if you were the Plaza Hotel, you'd be out of business, correct? Oh. And if that was your business model. So my idea was to decentralize all those detectives, push them out into the area commands, give them a smaller geography of responsibility and a more timely response to victims of crimes, and that would increase by virtue the solvability of those crimes. And so in today's numbers, we're right around 29%.
Wow.
So I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud of. And hopefully it remains that way when I'm not the sheriff anymore and somebody else doesn't change
that's you brought me to what I wanted to ask you, which is, so you've been sheriff for 5 years?
6.
6 years? How long is the term?
They're 4-year terms. There's no limit to the terms, so I have 2 years left in this term.
Oh, and you can keep going as long as you're elected.
Yeah.
You won by a pretty big landslide last time.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that.
But no, what it is I think the limiter is stress, and whether that's the limiter, not the term limits.
Right.
So
right.
whether you can endure, or maybe you want a new challenge, I don't know. I haven't made that decision yet whether I'm going to run again or not. I think I have plenty of time to make that decision. So I have, like I said, I have 2 years left in this term, and I'll make a decision at some point.
Well, that was sort of my next question, is what does the future look like for you, and where do you see, obviously you're an elected official now, is that a capacity you like being in, or?
I didn't like it in the beginning. I think it's growing on me in some aspect. I really like answering to the people. In other words, I'm not answering to one particular boss. I have a lot of people I have to answer to, and I like that. I like that, the fact that they elected me and I'm responsible to them, and that's who I speak to. And it's a change in my personality that took me a while to get used to, because right. I was a little I'm type A, but I was a little introverted. It's caused me to be extroverted, and so I depends on whether I'm challenged or not.
Okay.
I feel like I'm going to continue to be challenged. I will run again. If I'm looking for a new challenge, I'll make that decision.
We'll support you in any endeavors.
And it may sound like I'm beating around the bush and I'm probably trying to conceal something, but I'm not. That's just God's honest truth that haven't made that decision yet. And it also depends on my family too. They may say, no way.
No way.
Yeah.
Right?
Not 4 more years. Well, before we let you go, I did want to ask you, so we're obviously mainly focusing our business on downtown Las Vegas. We're one of the larger landowners here. We've been invested here since 2004. What do you see as the best next steps for downtown to continue to evolve? Mainly, obviously from your point of view, which is from a safety and security point of view. How do you think downtown can continue to improve? Besides for Greyhound leaving, which is probably the number one thing anybody would say, what else would you like to see happen down here, both development-wise and organizational-wise?
Well, I think downtown's reinvented itself, and I think that's important in the casino environment. And whether it's downtown or the Strip, they have to continually reinvent themselves in order to get people to come. And I think downtown has done a very good job in that. I mean, just now recently the Circa is open, which is your neighbor, correct?
Neighbor, we're all in this together. We compete, but we're neighbors.
Water rises all ship, right?
That's right.
And I think that's the philosophy that people have to have because even if a person's coming here to stay at the Circa, they're going to go out the doors and go to the Plaza, correct?
Yep,
and I think it's important for all of them to progressively improve upon their properties and provide a new experience, which Vegas is famous for, in order to be relevant.
Oh, we're providing a new experience now in these COVID times. That's for sure.
Yeah,
No one's ever experienced this before.
Since I came to town and everything, the revenue model has changed significantly from gambling to restaurants to entertainment, and I think Vegas has done a very good job of adjusting and morphing and changing to address that issue. But in particular to public safety, I think an economy is only as strong as its police force and that blanket of safety that it's provided for. My understanding of the economics of Vegas, around 30 to 35% of all your customers are repeat customers. And if they have a bad experience when they come here, they're not coming back. And nobody can afford to lose 30% of their product. And I think the important piece behind this, because a lot of people get lost in the fact that security and or law enforcement is a drain on your bottom line. The cost doesn't bring a return on product, and I think that philosophy has to continue to change and understand that without us, the product fails on its own. And the casino industry has been very, very, very supportive of local law enforcement, and because of that support, we've been successful in balancing our budget and hiring police officers. So I think the important piece is to continue to provide that support.
Well, thank you for that support. Thank you for your service. And thank you for joining us on the corner of Main Street.
We don't have any jokes.
Oh, you have a joke?
No, you got a joke for Oscar Goodman?
Come on. Want a joke? No, I did have a serious question. Someone was asking me, can you get them off parking tickets?
No. What?
Can you get people off parking tickets?
Can I give parking tickets?
Get people off parking tickets.
No, absolutely not.
No. We'll save that for the mayor.
The only people that can do that is the court system. So quite often people say, hey, Sheriff, can you take care of this two guys? And no. So here's the unique thing, and I'll explain it to your listeners, is a lot of people think we have quotas, which is absolutely false. And it actually depends on what jurisdictions live in. But here at this jurisdiction, the revenue model, all the money that's generated from citation goes to the court. We don't see a dime of it. So I don't send police officers out on motorcycle and say, hey, I need you to write 30 tickets a day. That's a falsehood.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, then I don't feel bad not paying them. Well, thank you, Sheriff. I really appreciate your time, your friendship, and your support to us. That's really appreciated.
Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak my mind. Was I speaking my mind or just talking?
No, you did great.
You did great.
All right.
You can tweet Sheriff, tell him what you thought at Sheriff_LVMPD. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be back again soon, but in the meantime, follow us on social. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @PlazaPod, and on Facebook, find us at Plaza Podcast, or go right to the top and tweet Jonathan at Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time from right here on the corner of Main Street.